Hi, everybody. It's midday. It's one of those times that I look forward to in the week. It's Wow Ergonomics with me and Stephen. So welcome, everybody, if you're listening on either Spotify, on the playback. I'll do that one first today. Or if you are joining us live on LinkedIn or Twitter. Nice to know, actually, our Twitter numbers are going up steadily but surely. Yeah, more and more people on Twitter land are getting into ergonomics, or just us talking. I don't know which one it is, but it's certainly getting a growing number of people that watch us on Twitter each week, which is lovely. So how's your week been?
Pretty good so far. Yeah, I have started to see business starting to pick back up and decisions starting to be made and more interest, Graham. I think I may have called it out to you last week or the week before that. I think the return to schools has been really, really important. I think, a subject we kicked around a few times was homeschooling, etc. But I think now that pressure's been taken off, I think it's allowing people to get back to the day job, as it were. So I think that from what I'm doing, where we're getting involved in a lot of projects around home and hybrid working, I think it started to pick up with a bit more pace. So yeah, good. A busy week so far, but obviously glad to be here as usual for Wow Ergonomics.
Great. Now I'm going to start with a slightly contentious issue then, picking up from what you've just said there, which is that because actually my youngest were going to school all the way through this last lockdown because my wife's a critical care worker. Now just hold on to that thought for a minute, that my wife is a critical care worker. And of course, the older ones were studying from home, and that was fine because they could do that. In fact, I don't think they were compromised at all. They both just got on with it. They've got their computers, etc. Good ergonomic setups as well, as you would expect in a house like this. So they've been back to school. They went back first week, just a couple of days. And it was kind of, just staggered in the first week or so. And they were doing their tests on a regular basis because they had to go in for a couple of days to learn how to do the tests, etc. And then this is last week, first week back full time, etc. My eldest is now at home again because someone in his year has COVID. Right. So now he's having to self-isolate for 10 days. Fortunately, we are racked up to our eyeballs here in tests because of my wife's work, etc. as well, and because they're handing them out in town. If anyone wants to buy any tests, I'm joking. But so we're testing on a regular basis. Okay. But now, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but in the first lockdown, was it not the case for a while that if one member of your house had to isolate, you all had to isolate? Was
it not if one person in your house had symptoms,
right,
and not just? I don't think if they were. Do you know what? I can't remember, Graham. I can't. It changes so often. I think they had to show some sort of symptoms to drag the rest of you into their sort of situation. I think if they were just isolating, the rest of you could sort of crack on. But I could well be mistaken on that. I don't know if anyone is watching us live can comment and confirm.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know. Really interesting to know. But the question I'm asking here is does this work? Because now that he's here, I mean, it's not a problem for me because I don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't really see anybody other than you once a week on here. But, my wife's continuing to go to work, which is fine. I mean, she's in full PPE all the time at work, etc., etc. But the other kids are continuing to go to school. But there's part of my brain that just doesn't understand the logic. If he's having to isolate because potentially he was in close contact with someone that had COVID at school, he's not isolating here, or he's not being told he's got to completely isolate here. And to be honest, given his age, that would be impossible anyway.
Yeah.
So is that not a risk to everybody else in the house? And then does that not then make a risk going back out there?
Who knows? I mean, I was talking to someone the other hang on.
Yes, all had to be at home, the whole household. They are. I knew it. I knew it. So first time round, we isolated everyone. This time round, we don't. We just isolate the one person.
I thought there was something to do with symptoms. I thought it was you only, because obviously your son isn't, I mean, this is, everyone's sort of brains fogged over, haven't they, with all the changes. But I thought something said to me there had to be some sort of symptoms, and that's what drew the rest of you in, whether you had the symptoms or not. But clearly it's not. So Renata's come up with a different theory. Very similar lines to your son, Graham. I was talking to a customer the other day, and the story went along the lines of one of his children had gone back to school and wasn't impacted by it directly, but the two children who had been on the school bus on the way in, when they then arrived at school and did the lateral flow test, came back as positive, and everyone else who was on that school bus then had to be identified, and they then are having to go through what your son's going with, the isolation piece. So the return to school, great, but they've got, completely stuffed by the fact that they were on the same school bus as someone who then on arrival, because I think schools are testing twice a week for senior schools. So they've obviously all gone in on the bus. 2 people have got test positive for the lateral flow. And then the whole lot of them, 50 odd, 52 is the number that sticks in my mind. They have then got to isolate on the back of a bus journey. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it?
It is. I just worry, given the positive conversation that we had right at the start of this program, that you're seeing a return to business picking up, etc. I just worry that there may be an undercurrent here with what's happening, that you suddenly see one child or one teacher gets it in the school, etc., and then that whole year has to isolate. Then people beginning to get back into work, etc., all find themselves getting pulled back in for one particular reason, etc., and we end up doing this. I don't happen to know the answers to this. I mean, and some people may disagree with this, but I mean, one theory that my wife put out there is, she said, why did we not wait until after Easter to send them back? Because actually you got Easter coming up anyway. That was a holiday. It was only a couple of weeks. What extra would we have achieved if we'd have perhaps just held on and then done it after Easter? Don't know. And maybe
Graham, to be honest, I think we've spoken about mental health quite a lot around the whole COVID piece and the children. I think the mental health of the parents teaching at home, I don't think could have hung on any longer, to be honest. I've been doing the school run with my youngest sort of this week, and I have to say the sheer, I mean, there was one parent, I mean, literally skipping down the road last week with delight. I'm not so sure parents homeschooling could have hung in until the Easter break, to be quite honest. I think people had just done enough, and if these sort of things happen, it's very much a small percentage, but I don't think people could have really carried on, not only for business that was being held back, but the mental health of the homeschooling parents, I think, would not have allowed another 3 or 4 weeks.
Although you've got to remember, it would have been Easter. So, I mean, chocolate and wine.
Well, that would have got them through.
It would have helped, Adam says, thanks for joining us, Adam. A friend of mine is a teacher in a junior school. His partner is a teacher in another one. They have a primary school age son. He calculated that their combined exposure in one day was over 100 households. It's a really difficult one. I don't think there is any right or wrong answer. I just brought it up as a bit of conversation this morning because it's obviously happened here. And as I say, my only concern is, in some households, does that then mean it's a start-stop situation for the parents? Because suddenly, I mean, it's okay when your child is of a certain age, but if you actually felt that there was a need then to be back home to parent that child, you just got back into work, etc. and now your child's back at home again. And somewhere along the lines with all of this, sometimes the start-stop bit is worse than actually getting going. So, or waiting to get going. Don't know the answers, but thank you to Renata and Adam for chipping in on that. Let's go to the first main topic of the day. I don't know which one I'm going to go for. I might just mix it up a little bit. In fact, I think I'm going to start with this one. Thornton's nil, Greg's 3. This is a football result, folks. Thornton's nil, Greg's 3. If you've been following the Champions League this year, they've slipped in some extra teams because we don't know what's going on because it's all played behind closed doors. So as far as we're concerned, this could actually be happening. What's this story all about then, Stephen? This is something that's come up in the paper.
I mean, it's carrying on the football analogy pun. This sort of kicked off. I think it was Monday where the first one came out, which was obviously the piece around Thornton's. That Thornton's have said they won't be reopening their stores post lockdown, and I think it was the number something like 60 stores, which they were down from hundreds and hundreds, 10 or 15 years ago. But they won't be opening their stores, and that was about 600 jobs at threat because of that. But on the flip side, yesterday, Greg's, I think, announced their worst performance in 36 years. But they have said they will be opening 100 new stores in 2021. So it's just the whole high street piece, isn't it, really, that you've seen one retailer sort of totally, stick the car in reverse and totally back away. And I guess Thornton's, I think, are going to be using the supermarket channel. And I think they've got a number of concession stores and things like that. But Greg's have gone the other way, and they're obviously looking to open more stores. And especially when we go back to our favourite subject around home working, etc., it's an interesting one by Greg's because, as the businesses start to get over, the numbers will no doubt be less people travelling before. They're obviously something that's quite convenient. You pick up maybe on the way or on the way home from work. So it's an interesting one that they're opening more stores, yet you'd think footfall would be reduced for workers actually leaving the house. So it's just an interesting one, really. I wanted to just pick this out and kick it around a bit, I guess. So
I think what would be interesting to see where they open those stores. Now, part of that may be, and especially as you've intimated there, that they actually had not the best year as well. Maybe there's an opportunity there at the moment because there's a lot of space, retail space that's shut, and maybe there's just a lot of retail space that's going at such a good price that it's worth them investing in that at this moment in time, because actually it almost in a suck it and see type situation. But will it all be high street location? That will be the really interesting test on this, because again, going back to what we were saying before in other shows, the high street per se is going to change. We know that city centres are going to change, and that ultimately we will probably see a different landscape developing there. So will it be in high streets, or will it be, as I have seen in some locations with Greg's, will it be on trading estates? So will they sort of up their efforts in terms of trading estates, or will it be more, and this is interesting, will it be more in small local towns stroke even villages?
Okay.
Because that's interesting. And actually I'll bring in another little topic of conversation here, which is that I got to speak to my neighbour during this week.
Is this the new neighbour? Is this the new neighbour?
It's not the new neighbour. This is one of the existing neighbours. But I got to speak to my one of my neighbours whilst we were doing the bins at safe distance, I hasten to add, the other day. Now, he, I think I've spoken about him before, he is a lecturer at my son's university, which is up in Cheltenham. He was about to go for his first ever trip up to Cheltenham to teach since the beginning of the first lockdown.
Okay.
Right. And that is his first journey out of our village, out of our town, since the beginning of lockdown. He's not been anywhere, right? And he said it's going to seem very, very surreal. He was traveling for 4 students, and and he said it's the only lecture that he's got to do on site, and then he'll be back here again. And interestingly, as an institution, he said they are thinking or talking about how much of it they are going to deliver online in the future, because actually from every point of view it makes more sense for them to deliver online, from an accessibility point of view, from a staff well-being point of view, for even actually interestingly from the point of view of some students hate online learning, but some students absolutely love it. And they are looking very closely at the moment as to what continues there. But he raised a very interesting point with this, which is, he said, and they've been debating it at the university, which is why I thought it was a really good topic. They believe we may see the return of the market town. We may see a return to people with knowledge and particular skills, rather than having to travel out of a town in order to go and find work, getting more of their work locally, and those skill sets actually staying more within that town. And actually we develop more of a town or localized culture again within the country, where actually we stay more within our local areas and we develop more of our local areas. Now that's a really interesting thought, and bringing that back to the Greggs. So will we actually see Greggs, not necessarily go for all of the big towns, but actually some of the smaller towns as well, where they can be competitive? But you actually think, oh, it's lunch. That's a relatively cheap lunch to buy. I'm just going to pop up to Greggs, get myself a lunch.
There will be clever people within their property side of their business who analyze all of the, they'll be doing data, there'll be studies that for someone to be investing in 3-figure new locations, they clearly know what's going to happen, don't they? They've got they've done some research, they've got the inside sort of nod as to what they really feel is going to happen, because otherwise you wouldn't be doing. And yes, they're not big properties, and I'm sure they maybe wouldn't be committing to huge leases, but you'd think they've probably got the inside track on what's going to happen. And therefore you're right. I think they will look at it and go, actually, if a lot more people are staying locally, how do we get into those local market towns where previously we've maybe not had a presence because there isn't enough footfall? Will there in future be that amount of business? I think we've spoken about it, haven't we, Graham, in the past, about from where you are in the country, probably a decent number of people regularly commuting up to London, etc., who are no longer going to be doing that because they only need to be there now once every 4 weeks, once every 3 weeks. Actually, they'll be at home more, or staying local, maybe in shared office spaces, and therefore that little stroll down at lunchtime to make sure they're staying active and healthy, we're going to use that to go and nip to somewhere like Greggs or something like that. So maybe it will just drive demand for that type of retail environment within that local smaller town, city, village, whatever it would be.
Well, if you think about one of the growth areas that we've seen from Greggs in the last couple of years, it's been to actually set up more shops in petrol stations and service stations across the country. You and I know from when we travelled, right, that more places where you stop for fuel or a coffee or whatever on the road, we're getting Greggs in. Now, surely that's been hammered. All of those places must have been hammered with less cars on the road, less long distance traveling, etc. So again, maybe they'll think about that. Maybe they'll move more into localized petrol stations or more sort of edge of town petrol stations, etc. And maybe more at the time being more empty places in towns where shops have gone. So I think it'd be really interesting to see if anyone from Greg's is listening, or or anyone from
or Thornton's,
or anyone that's expanding retail wise. We'd love to hear from you on this program, and do come on as guests. It'd be tremendous to get someone like that on to give us an insight into where things are going to go. But yeah, Thornton's nil, Greg's free.
Graham, just one last thought on that. I'm not from a recruitment background, and I'm probably seeing this very simplistically, but wouldn't it be interesting if those two organisations could talk to each other? One's expanding and one is mothballing retail. Wouldn't it be interesting if, and I'm sure people out there in the recruitment sector would say it doesn't work that way. You're seeing it too simplistically, Stephen. But wouldn't it be interesting if there could be some sort of tie-up to say, Thornton's can say, we've got staff based in these locations who aren't going to have a job when we get made redundant. You're looking to do some sort of expansion. And yes, I know there's competition out there, but you almost feel that there's a potential synergy there, isn't there? Is that something that could be tapped into?
Oh no, it absolutely is. And I don't know whether you saw the little live that I did with Lucy Dean, who's a recruitment specialist for both the construction, transport and freight industry. But one of the topics we covered on that was the fact that, there are some opportunities at the moment, especially around retail, where people not necessarily at the shop facing front of retail, but in the back end of retail have lost their jobs because those parts of the retail section have closed down, for them to use transferable skills to move into other things within sort of freight or transport, etc. Because there are other areas that are growing still, and it may be that ultimately, if you've managed a warehouse and you've moved goods with a forklift truck, etc., you may well be able to move from a retail section to another retail section, or you could actually move from there to something in construction, say for example moving bricks around in a warehouse as opposed to clothes. So it'd be interesting to see where people end up, and do people pursue those sort of transferable skills as well. We have another comment.
We do.
Oh, look at this.
Here we go.
My sister, my goodness, we're completely covered. If you're watching this live, you can see this. But if you're on
some
Spotify,
people would say that's an improvement, Graham.
Yeah, if you're listening to this on Spotify, then Adam's comment that he's just put up, that I've put up on screen, completely covers and obliterates mine and Stephen's face. My sister teaches contract law at Southampton University. Most of her students come from abroad, and for the last year, she has done all of her tuition online. Going back to that point, the university has embraced this technology to deliver teaching without the need for classrooms. The most resistance has come from her peer tutors, some of whom have absolutely refused to learn how to use online conferencing systems. Now, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
My sister actually uses Teams and Zoom in tandem so that she can present on one platform and keep track of, and there it cuts out because it can't allow that. But that's really interesting. So actually some of the resistance has actually come from peers and teaching peers within the teaching profession. Times are changing, folks. I think, that's one of the things that we keep coming back to on this program, is that you have to learn to adapt going forward in these times. And Phil, that I've done some work with on the edtech side of things, did a wonderful talk at one of the events that I put on, where he said, as a sort of shot across the bow to anybody in the education sector, he said, your students are watching YouTube. Your students learn on a day-to-day basis general stuff on YouTube. If your lectures aren't up to YouTube standard, you're failing, right? And it's a really interesting thought. So we're going to see a big revolution, I think, in the whole education system. And ultimately, I talked to a couple of people the other day, and they went, don't get the value now of education in university. I don't know that I totally agree with that, but the interesting thing that was being said there was that we can learn so much better from good video content, or even paid for video content that's available online. And ultimately, stuff from universities, in some cases, maybe 2 or 3 years behind. I don't know whether that's the case. It'd be good to hear from any tutors out there that want to, argue the case that that's not the case. But certainly when I was at university, some of the lecturers were dreadful. And I would have far preferred to have watched it on YouTube, and probably would have learned a lot more. So, we did have good ones, but we also had bad ones as well.
Yeah.
If you've got anything to comment on education, there you go. If you're wondering, by the way, why this program is called Wow Ergonomics, when some of the time we don't even talk about ergonomics, so are we don't.
Yeah.
It just seemed like a great idea, because we do both know about ergonomics, and therefore we will talk about ergonomics occasionally, but we do also want to sort of touch on the sort of trends and things that are happening in the workplace and in culture at any given point, because they all actually affect ergonomics in one shape or form. And there you go. So let's go to this one next. The EU and vaccines. What a week it's been, hasn't it, in terms of the news, in terms of especially the AstraZeneca vaccine. All I can comment on is from experience of talking to people that have had the vaccines. There do seem to be more side effects, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but this is just personal experience, nothing else. There do seem to be more side effects with the AstraZeneca. Most of the people that I know that have had the AstraZeneca have been a little bit poorly afterwards, which is nothing to be unexpected, to be honest. With a vaccine, you would, you're going to have the flu vaccine, you would expect to maybe be poorly for a day or two. But there seems to be sort of more side effects with that than, say, the Pfizer vaccine. But at the end of the day, what's going on in Europe? I mean, really, is this political? There's a news story now this morning, apparently, about Boris saying this could be the start of some kind of Cold War.
You do have to think: is any of this sort of politically motivated? Hello, Jenny.
Hello, Jenny.
It almost. There was sort of stories a few weeks ago where it wasn't being advised for people over a certain age. Was it France wasn't allowing it for the over 65s or something like that? And you do look at it and you think, is there an element of envy? There'll be a whole process of reviewing everything that's gone on from the 20th of March last year around every decision that was ever made. But you do look and think, is there envy that the fact that we do seem to be leading the way? Israel are doing a great job with their vaccine program, but we are cracking on. Some of the countries in Europe that are, within a few hundred miles of our borders are miles behind us, absolutely miles. I mean, I think I've just seen this morning that people sort of 50 to 51 or 52 are getting their text messages about their appointments, and people are booking in for this weekend. I guess, Graham, we're in the next bracket, aren't we? Would that be right? Would we say are we in the next one down?
I'm in the next one down. I'm we're just missing out on this one. It's my 50th birthday this year. So would have been in there, but it's not going to be long now.
I think we'll probably. I think by the middle of April, me and you in the 40 to 49 bracket will have had ours. I'd have thought maybe just at the end of the back end of the Easter holiday, something like that. So, but if you speak to people in Europe, they're miles behind. I mean, they're sort of, I don't know the numbers. I've seen the numbers, can't think of them top of my head, but their rates at getting the people over 65, 70 with the jabs are way down. You think we've probably moved on from that already. We're already getting down the scale that within a month's time we'll be probably tapping into people in their 30s. Yeah. So you do think, is there an element of, like you said, politics? There's an element of envy. I mean, I know there's frustration from the people of the other countries who are just frustrated that their governments do appear to be dragging their feet. Are they looking for excuses? Is it mixed it with Brexit still? Is there still a bit of angst and bitterness around that? Who knows? I
mean, okay, here's my personal viewpoint on this, which is that, and I actually have, because I've had some conversations. In fact, I'm going to be talking to a musician later this afternoon who's probably not going to have the vaccine, and that's her choice. Okay, and I know why, and I'm not going to go into that. I'm not going to discuss that because she's shared that with me, and that's very kind of her. I've had some conversations with people that are not going to have the vaccine, and normally when I have those conversations with people, they have reasons why they are not going to have the vaccine, and I totally appreciate and understand that. My view is, if you're of a certain age where you can make up your mind about this whole thing, you've seen from the news reports and whatever, you understand that there's risk involved, like there are with anything medical. I mean, if you stick a needle in someone's arm, there's always a risk. Yeah. Always a risk. If you put something foreign in someone's body, there is always a risk. Right? Surely, to some extent, should this actually be a government decision, or should this be down to people? Right? There are going to be a load of people that are not going to get vaccinated, and that is actually up to them whether they get vaccinated or not. There's a whole load of other people that want this vaccine, want to see this as the way out, see this as the light at the end of the tunnel, and just want to get on with it, and actually would prefer to have it now. I just wonder whether it's, ultimately at the end of the day, this shouldn't be down to people being able to make a choice for themselves wherever they are. I have the vaccine, I don't have the vaccine. Some really interesting comments coming in.
Yeah.
I had the AC vaccine with no side effects apart from a sore arm and a mild headache. My wife has had slightly more reaction, but she has ME. Okay, there you go. That's fair comment. There's several people she's in contact with similar chronic conditions, and they seem to have had more unpleasant reactions. Absolutely. There are people with conditions. There are people that have got a family history of people being affected by vaccines, etc., etc. I totally agree that it should be any individual's right as to whether or not they have the vaccine. But that's the whole point. Should it be down to governments, or should it be, if it's available, should it be down to individuals' rights to whether or not they have the vaccine? Renata back again. In Europe, they vaccinate people of different professions, e.g. teachers, lecturers, social workers. It is not so age bound.
Okay.
Right. Interesting. And one last one. The conspiracy theorist in me wonders if there are some sour grapes with the countries not using AZ. It is because they are short of supplies and pointing the blame at AZ.
Graham, you were just talking there, I think it was Renata's comment about professions. There was a story that I think it was in the national press at the back end of last week. I don't know whether you saw it or how much exposure it got, but they were saying, if you look at Derby and Burton hospitals combined, they've got a workforce of something like 16,000 or just under 16,000 people. And they were saying, so healthcare front and center, they were saying there was something like 1,000 people still hadn't been vaccinated, even though they were in one of the priority groups. Now, obviously, some of them were down to, people who were pregnant, etc. You can fully understand that, but you do look and you think, frontline workers, almost 1,000 people hadn't taken it, and not sort of commenting on their decision because there could be reasons why, but when you start seeing those sort of numbers, you think actually you'd have thought they would have been in the high 90s, wouldn't you, potentially, that sort of profession? But actually, I'm trying to do the maths roughly in my head, but that's probably about 7%, 8%, 6-7%, something like that, haven't had it, who work in hospitals. And you're thinking, actually, that's more than you thought. You'd think, isn't it, really? And you're thinking, well, what message does that potentially send out to the wider public if a lot of frontline care workers or hospital workers aren't taking it or having the option of doing it themselves?
I know. I don't know what the answer is here. Thanks for everyone for putting their opinion forward. But, I think at the end of the day, my personal view is if Europe don't want it, then get it back over here quicker.
We'll have it,
and we'll have it. I'll have it quicker than I was going to have it. I'll have it next week, please. Thank you very much.
Graham, there's a thought. Hang on a sec. Just thinking this through here, and this may not work, but I mean, surely there's got to be the opportunity on Wow Ergonomics for a live vaccine, hasn't there?
Oh, amazing! Yeah, live vaccine.
I bet you can't. I wonder if you could. I wonder if you're allowed to take it. Could that potentially, me and you? We may have to discuss this off air. But could we get a Wow Ergonomics live vaccine? Must be rules around taking social media devices into.
I don't know. I mean, we'd have to check that out, wouldn't we? If anyone knows the rules on that, let us know. I mean, I'm up for it. I mean, I'll take the camera into I'll take the camera into my local centre and let people see me getting stabbed in the arm. That's fine. At least you'll know where I've gone. If I do have an adverse reaction, you'll be able to go. Oh, that's what happened to him, and you won't wonder where I'm not there the next week. So there you go. Oh no, I think that's fair enough. Absolutely. If you've got any more comments on the EU and vaccines, what's your opinion? What's your say on the topic? What do you think should be going on? Do you think this is all political, or do you think that there are real concerns which we haven't yet addressed properly and should be properly investigated before people have the vaccine? Can we afford to wait? I don't know. Don't know is the answer to that. I'm just having to answer a text. Sorry about this.
Okay. You don't let the show interrupt your conversation, Graham.
No, absolutely no. Well, it's the boss calling.
Okay.
I don't know what's the matter. So there we go. Let's go on to the next topic for today, which we've got to sing this bit. Dirty cash, I want you. Dirty cash, I need you. Oh, right. So money talks.
Stevie Nicks?
No. What the song Dirty Cash? Now someone's going to come in here quickly. The Adventures of Stevie V.
Stevie V. That's it. Yes.
See, you were nearly there with that.
There was a Stevie in there.
There was, yes. Stevie Nicks. No,
just not the singer from My Mind's Gone Blank. Fleetwood Mac. There you go.
There you go. So, hang on. There's a knock at the door. Yes, do come in. Hello.
Mum needs either you or me to go immediately to her work with Liz.
Oh, well, you better go.
Okay.
All right. My son's now having to go immediately to my wife's work with a monkey wrench.
Okay.
That's interesting. I mean, that's live. You don't normally get this kind of live thing on air, but obviously it sounds like they've had a leak.
Graham, just carrying on the music theme again. Can't think. Monkey Wrench by.
Can't go. Can I?
Foo Fighters. Sorry.
I can't go. Can I? I'm self-isolating.
I will have to go in a minute because I'm in the middle of a show.
Okay.
All right. There we go.
Hey, to be fair, Graham, he's following the self-isolation rules.
Do you see? I tested him there, and he was immediately straight back with, I can't do that. Well, there you go. Maybe we'll just have to wrap up slightly early today so I can get out to do that.
There's
anyway,
a dental emergency, hospital emergency.
Well, it's a bit worrying, isn't it, that I've got to take a monkey wrench to a dental practice. It's a what? Sorry, it's a ball wrench apparently.
Okay,
an adjustable ball wrench. Adjustable wrench. A decibel. I don't know what you're saying. I've got headphones on. I can't hear.
Never worked with kids and animals, Graham.
Oh, absolutely. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. If you've got any opinions on working with kids and animals, you can also let us know. Right. Last thing of the day then. Yeah. Dirty Cash, I want you. This is about the fact that ATM machines are disappearing all over the place. I didn't realize it was such a dramatic thing and that so many were actually going, but it's mainly free to use ones. They're going to continue with the ones, obviously, that charge you £2 a time or whatever to use. Dirty rotters that they are.
Yeah.
I hate that, don't you? When you get to a service station or something and you think, oh, great cash machine. And you go up to it, it's like, going to charge you £2 to use this.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. And then I'm like, no, you're not. But, obviously throughout this whole period as well, to kind of accelerate all of this, people have just not been using cash. And I have had some great comments on the poll this morning about this that I did. People saying, "Oh, well, I normally have an emergency £20 note in my wallet, which I use just in case of emergencies, but it's been in there a whole year. Haven't used it." So there you go. People are not using cash. No. Now, where would you use cash these days, Stephen?
Well, I think we were discussing this before. There's only two places where I think I currently use cash, both vital services. One's the ice cream van.
That is vital. Yeah,
absolutely. If you want to keep children happy and sugared up. The second one, which is very, very important, again, for children is, and I think I answered this on one of your polls, Graham, the other week about ironing. I will fess up. We send the ironing out, and the place where the ironing goes, we don't do the ironing. No, I'm totally over ironing. However, the two places are the place where the ironing goes and the ice cream van. Apart from that, I can't think anywhere else where I've been that has needed cash. And I guess other thing, I mean, I've just noticed a comment there from Renata about the tooth fairy. The other one is, I guess when you were a kid, it's a great one.
Renata, folks, just in case you're listening, said, how are we going to make the tooth fairies visiting the children with what?
Well,
plastic.
Do you not find now, though, when your kids go to birthday parties, though, I have to say we've moved on from a tenner. It's get them an Amazon voucher.
Crazy.
So therefore, I'm struggling apart from ice cream van, tooth fairy, ironing place.
Yeah.
Why else would I need cash?
Right. Okay. So I'm going to go for mine.
Okay.
I'm going to deconstruct one of yours. We have an ice cream van that can come round to our local, and you book it, right? But you can pay by card. In fact, you can pay. Yeah, not only can you pay by card, you can pay contactless, and on your Apple Pay and all that.
Okay.
So moving on, you should be able to see ice cream vans where you literally. In fact, the future, thinking about it for ice cream vans, right, is that an ice cream van with an app, and you just order in advance your ice creams, and then he turns up and gives them to you. I say him, that's being sexist. Him, her, in the ice cream van, right? That just happens. See, so there's no need necessarily going forward for an ice cream van to have that. Down here in the West Country, the one place you still need coins quite often is car parks.
Car parking.
Right? Which I still don't get to this day.
No.
Right? Why on earth do you anywhere in Britain to this day have a car park that doesn't take card or has that telephone thing?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And if you're in charge of that at a car park, someone, can you stop it? Because that is annoying.
Do you know what, Graham? I tell you what I don't like. I can't stand the car park with the phone. That's more irritating than coins.
Well, it is. Well, it isn't.
Whoever came up with that idea, that is just so annoying.
It isn't. It isn't. Right. And actually, I've done a poll on that before now.
Oh, have you?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, believe it or not, I've done a poll on everything, haven't I? Really. But I did a poll on that because I said I was taking all of those, because I hadn't been out for ages. I was taking all of those various apps off my phone, right? Because you have to have a different app everywhere. That would be fine if you could have one app across the country that did your car at every single car park. Can we get that sorted out? Someone, please get that sorted out. Let's not have. Let's have a monopoly there. I don't care. There are some places where a monopoly would be a great thing. That would be it. Car parks and apps. I just want one company to run the whole country, and it's one app, and I just arrive there and I go, yeah, I'm parking here. Thanks. Boom. That's it. I actually look for car parks with app-based payment systems. Yeah, absolutely, Adam. I totally get it. You know, I think that's fine. But some of the people, and I did, the poll was about how many of these apps do you have on your phone? Some people got like 6 apps.
But just for car parking.
Car parking. And I know exactly where they were coming from, because I was like that. Because I traveled all over the country, I've got apps everywhere. And each car park, you have to have a different app. It's nonsense. But yeah, still down in this part of the West Country, in case people were wondering where I'm talking about, there's still some car parks where it literally is coin only. And you think that is ridiculous, because no one carries coin anymore. And do you know what you end up doing? I'll tell you that, like, without a shadow of a light, this is what you end up doing. You end up going to one of those car parks, looking around to make sure that there's no traffic warden or car parking attendant there. And then you run to the nearest, you look on your Google thing beforehand for the nearest cash points. You run to the nearest cash point or supermarket, because you know they're going to have it. Get a tenner out, go into the supermarket, buy something stupid so that you've got some coins, then run back and pay. And you just think, that is a nonsense.
You would think, though, Graham, with everything that's gone on with COVID, you know, and actually the coins, the touching the coins, the cash, that would be one of the areas that surely they're going to get to soon. Is in the whole reduction of cash, not just notes but also coins. Is going to be looking at those things, you know, looking at those areas where people are still touching coins. Again, you've no idea where they've been before. Now, I guess I don't know whether, you know, COVID can be passed on by things like that. I guess probably not. But again, you do look and think, surely that's one of the things that's going to get phased out. Is anything that's coin based? Surely, you know, getting contactless or even like, you know, the apps, which I hate. But that's got to be one of the things that's going to be tackled at some point. You'd think, wouldn't you?
I think we will see it go. The other reason I think that from the economy point of view that governments will want to see it go is because it stops the cash in hand trading. How many businesses still to this day make a little bit of money because it's cash in hand, and ultimately nobody knows that business happened? Suddenly, if it's got to go through a system and through a bank account, it's traceable, and, you know, therefore HMRC can trace it. They can align that transaction to a bank account. If they investigate that person, they can see where that's happening, and it's going to stop all of those transactions from happening now.
And bank robbers, Graham. What are bank robbers? They're all going to be made redundant because there's going to be no cash, Nick.
Absolutely pointless. COVID on metals it's more resistant than a lot of other materials.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Adam. But here's the rub. You see, I just wonder, this is another thing with all of that happening. Yes, that puts money back into government coffers from people that are not paying enough tax because they're earning money without declaring it. But ultimately, for the consumer, is it going to make life more expensive? Because yet again, it's like all things, swings and roundabouts. While people can do the odd bit of work, and I'm not condoning this at all, but while people can do the odd bit of work under the table, so to speak, with a little bit of cash, it does mean that occasionally certain things in life can be a little bit cheaper for people. And at a time where people haven't got money in their pockets, that can sometimes be a bit handy, because it means that people don't have to pay out so much. As soon as you have to put something through a process and invoice it, etc., and it has to, you know, you've got to pay tax on it, people are going to charge you the proper rate. It does mean that certain services will go up. How will that affect, for example, builders, you know, anyone with a trade, etc., mechanics, you know, that, I mean, these are all trades and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, I'm sure most of you out there are completely reputable, etc. But these are the kind of trades where traditionally a little bit of cash in hand work has gone on, you know. But it does mean that all of those things may disappear as you being able to get something slightly cheaper if people actually have to put things through their books. So in fact, it might stop more people going into those industries as well, because actually there may not be as much money in it for them if they can't do a little bit of cash dealing. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how cash goes in the next few years, and whether or not cash will continue to be part of our culture, or whether it will disappear.
You'd think though, Graham, you've still got the older generation who are, and actually it ties back to what we were saying about lecturers before, wasn't it, around Zoom and Teams and things like that. It's that older generation who are always used to dealing in cash that obviously it can't be removed from them, but you almost think, is there some sort of program, a big educational piece to be done around that, around getting those people who aren't comfortable with it actually dealing with contactless, etc., rather than themselves getting involved in cash. So there's a big, it almost goes around every subject we've covered. There's an educational piece that would really, really benefit everyone, but it's putting that process in place, isn't it? So well, it's Zoom, Teams, and contactless.
And you've brought it back round to ergonomics. So, you know, at the end of the day, we have to think about, you know, how people transaction, you know, in different spaces as well. And we want to get away from, ergonomics isn't necessarily just about how you sit at a desk or you know, how you use a particular piece of machinery, etc. It can also be about, you know, the whole experience of how life is for you within a particular environment, you know. And there was a piece in the news, I think it was about 2 weeks ago now, about Amazon opening its first retail unit in the UK, which was completely devoid of staff, you know, and you literally walk in and you pick up off the shelf, and as you walk out, it you know, it does your bill and takes it off of your bank account because it knows where you're picking from. And they've had those in the States for a little while now, but we've got our first one over here.
And there was a follow-up story, Graham, as well. I think a bit of a sub-story that followed on a couple of days later. Can't remember. It was one of the Nordic countries in Scandinavia where a guy had done a similar thing there, where it was like a little convenience store for some of the more remote areas, and exactly the same. There was no till or anything. It obviously clocked you as you went in. You'd obviously, you know, clocked whatever you were picking as you went through, and then deducted it or charged the app for that amount. So again, I can't remember. I'm sure it was, I want to say it was Norway, one of the Scandinavian countries. But again, that concept had sort of been something they'd been using as well for those sort of far-flung remote areas where maybe getting staff is difficult. They'd actually made that a cashless environment that tied back to the app.
Yeah. So what I want to see, clever people that are out there, is I want to see car parks advance in terms of that kind of technology. I just think it's obvious. I think at the end of the day, what I want to see is a car park where it knows that I've driven my car in. It then links my car registration to an app. My app pings up and goes, "You've just entered this car park. Are you gonna be staying in this car park? Yes or no?" Therefore you can make a decision about it. Because you might have just driven around and gone, "Oh, there's no car parking spaces," and maybe it gets some feedback from you there as to why you're not staying as well. There are no parking spaces, you know, and that helps them realize that, you know, some great data. At this time of the day, there were no car parking spaces, you know, and then, you know, it knows whether you've left or not. So it would automatically charge you if you hung around. But if not, I'm staying, etc. And then it gives you the options on the screen. How many hours do you want to stay for? Bang, 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 boom, and takes the money. Right? I don't need to go up to a machine. Don't need to go up to a machine. I just want it to ping up on my app because I've gone into the car park. What is the point? Because that is another bugbear of mine, right? When you go to a big car park, having to walk half a mile to find the parking machine and then back to the car again to stick the thing on and then back again to that side of the place because that's the exit. That's ridiculous. You and I both know, because we've both had that experience, sometimes that can take you forever doing that. And whilst you're at it, clever people that are programming this stuff at the same time, right? When you get the reminder, here's a clever thing. When you get the reminder about returning to your car because your time's running out as well, can the app also tell you which floor of the car park you're on, please?
Oh, yes.
And what space,
definitely.
Right? How brilliant would that be, right? Here's a reminder. You need to go back to your car park now. And by the way, you're on floor D and in space 31.
But Graham, they wouldn't need to send a reminder if we could link it to an app and it just charged you for all the time that you're there. So we get rid of the reminder. We just know it's £6 per hour. And if you were there, 3 hours and 15 minutes, you get charged 3.25 times the rate. That's what we need. This get away from the hassle of buying a ticket for so long. You park there and we charge for however long you're in between the entrance and the exit barrier. Happy days. Do you know what, Graham? Car parks, we've got to come back to car parks and cash. We've just scratched the surface, I think, today. This is the real joker in the pack, this one.
It is. It's actually a really, really interesting subject. And for anybody that's spent an inordinate amount of time on the road like you and me, it's an absolute bugbear. I mean, in my previous life, probably spent around sometimes £1,200 a month on car parking, right? That is serious business. Now, there's loads of people out there that sell goods or whatever else that haven't been spending that money, etc. But when we do get back to moving again, for you to convince me to get into a car park again and use your car park, I want to see some smart technology, right? Because you would agree with me, if the price is right and the experience is right in that situation, you're going to use that car park every time. Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. It's about experience. And that comes back down to ergonomics. Ergonomics is all about getting that, personal experience right within that environment. So let's get away from car parks where you have to walk to a car parking machine. No coins, please. Thank you. That's silly. Let's get away from a different app per car park because that's daft. What we want is smart technology. I go in, it knows my phone number is linked to my car, and on the APNR system, it goes boom, you're in this car park, sends me something on my phone and goes, right, how do you want to pay for it? And they can still have a machine for an idiot that's forgotten their phone. But how many people do that these days? Well, how many people, well, actually, saying that, I've had to run up the road with 2 people's phones from this household last day. But most people travel with a phone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you could probably have one machine in a thing that's for like, you've forgotten your phone, sort it out here. But everybody else, their experience could all be off an app on a phone and without touching anything at all. And I just wonder going forward, as an ergonomic experience for retail or shoppers or anything out there, we will probably see less and less actual physical contact required with whatever environment we're in order for us to buy into that product or that service that we're actually wanting. It just makes sense. All of this has been accelerated from the pandemic, but it just makes sense in terms of our experience as end users within that environment. So thank you for that. I'm now going to go and run up the road with my Foo Fighters monkey wrench. And go and see what's going on. Hopefully it's not a gas leak, because that would be really, really awful. But thanks for everyone for listening today. Thanks for all the great comments. Lovely to see so many comments today. Thanks in particular to Renata and Adam, who between them have written probably enough for a whole thesis. You probably deserve you actually deserve a sort of medal for that. Adam, one last comment from Adam to finish the show today. I use Just Park where you park in people's drives. Much cheaper, national, and normally just a short distance from where you need to go. Quite often you can book into national car parking organisations parks too. Really good idea. More people opening up their own private drives for people to park in. That's another thought as well. Again, it all needs to be smart. Wow, Ergonomics finishing there again at 1 o'clock on this lovely Wednesday. We will see you again next week. Bye for now.
See you next week.